What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Team Chat Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jerrett Wilson, joined through the power of the internet by Rachel Mogan.
Buongiorno.
Buongiorno to you as well. We're still having to do this.
It doesn't sound right to me when you say joined on my right by Rachel Mogan.
Oh, that's right. I didn't say it. I had to say through the power of the internet. So join.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I guess in how we're recording right now on with our positioning, I know it's flip-flopped for the people in the final thing. I'll be on the right, Mogan will be on the left, but then I guess technically right now in how it's looking, yeah, you're on my right technically. So
well, that's all.
Works.
You should have said it the right way then.
I'm sorry. I'll start over.
Don't redo it. No, don't start over.
No, we have to. We have to do it again. Hey, everyone, hi. On my left, on my right. God damn it! I still can't even do it right when I'm trying to do it right.
And you still gestured to your right, but said left.
I know. My brain's all crosswired and everything like that because we're just still here.
Stage left, Jerrett. Stage left.
Those directions never help me, right? I'm terrible.
Don't.
Even though like I film and do video and stuff like that, whenever I'm trying to give people on camera direction, I still mess it up and have to be like, wait, which way am I telling them to go? So I'm just terrible with directions, apparently. But, you know, that's neither here nor there because we are here to talk about some video games here on Team Chat Podcast, a video game show where we talk about games, the ones we love, the ones we hate, and everything in between. New episodes come out Tuesdays, 9 a.m. Central Time, and you can listen to those on podcast services around the World Wide Web, such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and others. You can also watch each and every episode over on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Team Chat Podcast. Links for all those things are in the description below, and where you can find a list of all the directory of the podcast services where we're available. And you can also join us on social media such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can join our Discord server where you can jump on there, talk to us about some games where we're not on here recording the episode. And finally, if you're wanting to help the show become bigger and better, you can head over to patreon.com/Team Chat Podcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you can support the show. And in return, we'll give you cool perks like getting the episodes early before the general Tuesday release, access to a private channel and a Discord server that is reserved solely for our patrons, as well as other goodies and early bits of content. So, but if you don't want to do that, that's no big deal. We totally understand, but we would still appreciate your support in either coming here to listen to the show, watch the show, telling your friends, subscribing on our YouTube or podcast service of your choice, and of course, writing us reviews and all that goodness helps make the show bigger and better because it helps get the word out to other people. So we are very appreciative and love all of you, our patrons and listeners alike. Well, I was going to say before we get into the main topic of the day, we're going to get into a little bit of moment with Mogan. But since today is since today is the conclusion, the epic finale of our top 10 soundtracks list of all time. So we're going to be bringing you spots 4, 3, 2, and of course, number 1. But so yes, we wanted to skip Moment with Mogan to have a little bit of time, a little bit of extra time, because while we know this episode will probably be a little bit longer, we're gonna try we're gonna try to keep it still manageable. We don't want a 3-hour episode here, though.
Our version of manageable is 2:45.
We just had that cut off. I actually did once a long time ago listen to a podcast that was like, it was OK Beast. Have you listened to any of their stuff? They did a big they did a really big episode that was like they ranked their top 10, but it was like their cumulative list. It was like 4 guys, and it was their list of like combined list, not their own each individual. And it was like doing that because they had to go through, call them out, get the top 25, then fight on the ranking. And it literally was like a 3-hour episode podcast. It was really good.
Impressive.
Like I really enjoyed it because they talked about some great tunes. But
well, I mean, with four people trying to talk, that's, you know, it's definitely going to take minimum 2 hours.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, so we're here going to talk about this. We're going to wrap up these rankings and give you guys some great music to listen to for the rest of your week or life even. You know, it's all great. Speaking of good music and previous entries on this list, I actually did yesterday get the vinyl of Red Dead Redemption 2 soundtrack.
Wow. Did it just come like with a banjo, like in the box?
No, but that'd be really cool. But
that'd be really cool.
The records themselves are clear. And the art on them is really cool. Yeah, it is really good. So listen to that yesterday.
Like those really cool clear versions of the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah, just like that. Just like that. Just not as many wires and stuff in the clear record and everything, you know, but as it is. But it was really cool. But what you been playing this week? What you been...
Don't judge me. I have been playing a lot of Animal Crossing, but I also got sucked back in again to Hollow Knight. So if you've seen me playing Hollow Knight on there, it's my new file. So it's not my old file where I'm stuck on the final tier of the Colosseum. Don't judge me, still haven't beat it. So it's not my completed file. It's my new redo file. And I'm really glad that I took so much of a break between starting it again, because there's all kinds of areas that I'm finding that I'm like, did I do this before? I kind of can't remember. Am I finding new things or did I just forget? So it's a nice feeling to be like, oh, this feels new again.
Oh, good.
So I'm having a ton of fun, of course.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been avoiding again still my I didn't play Doom Eternal at all this week. I just wasn't, for whatever, just wasn't in the right mindset for it. I really wanted this week. I was looking for a game to just kind of really separate myself from the current world and everything going on. So this week I've been staying pretty consistent with Dragon Age Inquisition. I've actually been playing it, continuing to play it on more.
That's great news. I like that a lot. I know that Varric is still in that one, isn't he?
Oh yeah, in all his bare-chested glory. He walks. Sure. It's like snowy and wintry in the first area where you meet him, and he's wearing this tunic with the deepest of V's.
The deepest V.
It's great. And I'm just like, yeah, Varric, talk to me. Tell me your tales.
I know I can't find the post again because it was on Tumblr and it's impossible to properly save posts, but there was a hysterical post of all of these romance novel covers that were based on Dragon Age characters and pairings, and they were all written by Varric, so he's the author on all of them, and they were hysterical and so well done.
That's
so
awesome.
Probably just type that into Google and see what you get. It's really funny.
That's good. I gotta find that. I'll have to look for that after we get finished. But no, I know last time I think I only made it 14, maybe 20 hours in the game or whatever.
Oh, that's still a pretty good amount.
It might have been closer to 14, I think, maybe 14, 15. But I'm already 7 hours in this playthrough, and I'm already farther than I was in my last game because I'm not derping around. Exactly. So it's been a really good time. And that soundtrack actually, spoiler alert, it's not making this list, but that soundtrack is actually for Dragon Age Inquisition is one of my is a favorite of mine as well, but just not enough to hit top 10.
You can't now say all 10 favorite because it's not.
No, it's not. It's definitely not. It's not on this list. But you know what? Let's get into this. Let's jump in. Let's get the people what they want, and that is some great tunes. But let's first review our ranking so far. So I've got number 10, Donkey Kong Country. Number 9, Red Dead Redemption 2. Number 8, Stronghold. Number 7, The Last of Us. Number 6, Doom 2016. And number 5, God of War. Mogan, what is your list so far?
My list was number 10, Final Fantasy VIII, a controversial entry indeed. Number 9, The Legend of Dragoon, a non-controversial entry. It deserves to be there. Number 8, Animal Crossing New Leaf. Number 7, Halo 3 ODST. Number 6, Golden Sun. And number 5, The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker.
Very nice, very nice. But now it is time to start with our number 4. Which one of us wants to go first? I don't remember.
I'm ready.
You're ready?
I'm ready.
All right,
to start.
let's do it. Go for it. Go for it.
Start
give me your number 1, number 4.
I'm gonna give you the sandwich. So first, we're just gonna listen to the track, and then I'm gonna tell you about it. Isn't that exciting?
I'm so curious. All right. Yeah. So we're changing it up a little bit this time, everybody. Oh my goodness. We're changing it up a little bit this time, everybody. I know in the previous entries, we've just been holding the phones up to the microphone. You've been hearing it, but we're going to change it up since these are our top 4. These are our favorites. These are the ones we really want you to be able to hear the music and let the music speak for itself. So we're going to introduce tracks. We're going to introduce the entries, and then we're going to, be quiet for a bit, let the music play so you can hear it in all its glory and its original quality as God intended. So, with that, let's go. Just wanted to give that little note so people were like, oh my God, it sounds so much better this time.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready. Hit me with it. Okay, so
what do you think that was?
Okay, so there were times in that where I was like, this sounds like it has a very Indian flair to me.
Interesting.
Yeah, a little bit there at the beginning. kind of had that influence sound to me. But honestly, I am stumped as to what game that could possibly be.
It is one that I've talked about at least once before in our soundtrack episodes. And I think when I say it, you're going to be like, oh, duh, it's Journey.
Oh!
So that was The Road of Trials from the game Journey. Not the band Journey. The game Journey is arguably better. Oh.
I mean, they each have their place, but yes, in this instance, Journey, the game soundtrack is better.
So, yeah, so for anybody that hasn't played Journey and maybe missed it, because by now it is an older game. You know, when we first talked about it, it was still just a little older. Now it's like getting on in years. Journey came out circa PlayStation 3. So this is a years old game by this point, and it features you play as a nameless character that has this really cute design of just sort of this, just blank slate of a black face with like white eyes in the middle. You have no real expressions, and you wear like a cute little hood and an adorable little cape, and you just have some very stylized little sticks for legs, basically. And you have a long scarf that billows out behind you. And Journey is all about your literal journey through this sort of desert land to something that you can see in the distance, but you don't really know what it is. And that's kind of all I'm going to say about what the game is, because that's about all there is to it. It's got some puzzling aspects to it, but it's mostly about the journey. It's very self-titled. So the soundtrack, though, is arguably the best part about the game. It's composed by Austin Wintory, who is now famous for this soundtrack. I believe the Journey soundtrack won quite a few awards.
Recently, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but I even saw that it, like at the end of the year last year, that it actually was hitting like #1 list for greatest soundtrack of the decade and stuff like that. I can't remember now where I saw it, but like he like shared it on his Instagram or something like that, and it was just like, oh yeah, like it's still getting the recognition.
And it should. And I actually didn't know that. So that's really good to hear, because I was just thinking, oh, back in ye olden days. And it's like, no, it deserves to still be recognized in the here and now. So the Journey soundtrack is such an amazing example of how, and really all of my top 4 are. So this is going to be a running theme. It's an amazing example of how game soundtracks can best be woven into their gameplay, into their story. And all 4 of my top 4 that we're going to be talking about here today are really good examples of how music fits the narrative. And I think Road of Trials is a really good example to start with, because it's very playful. It's very lighthearted. It has a really quick tempo, and that sort of plucking style that you heard on the cello, I believe, and the flute tones that come in. It's just such an uplifting tune. And I think that even though it's called Road of Trials, you don't feel like it's it doesn't sound like a burden.
No, it honestly sounded more like a tavern song kind of thing or something like that you would hear. It was Push Square is the website that gave it soundtrack of the decade #1. Journey represents the crowning achievement in game music.
Yeah. And then I don't really want to talk too much about the soundtrack, because I feel like it might be worth it more to take some of the words from Austin Wintory himself.
Oh, sure.
So in an interview with TSA, which is the Sixth Axis, that's really hard to say, but Wintory was asked, so the interviewer says, I asked Wintory about the way the game always seems to preempt what you're doing, at least in terms of how the music reacts to the player's actions. Without spoilers, there's one area where the player takes a large dive after a rapid section, and the music always fits perfectly. So he's basically asking Wintory, how did you accomplish that? And Wintory says, I never wrote a piece of music without detailed instructions from that game company, which is the developer of Journey, on how to implement it, he says. He tells me it helps that he's a gamer and even has a bit of programming background, and thus feels that he could communicate relatively easily. Once a mock-up of a game was in place, Wintory continued, I could reiterate on it and continuously refine both how it felt and how it's being triggered by the system. The goal, of course, was to make it totally seamless so that it feels like the music is unfolding in real time, as if being written by an unseen and very fast composer. Not sure if I succeeded, but that was definitely the goal. And I think that anybody that has played the game would argue, or even just heard the music, would argue that it was accomplished in spades and that it's one of the greatest soundtracks of all time. Of course, he succeeded. And to kind of, we're trying to go through these relatively quickly so that we can make sure that all of our tracks are featured. I just feel like both in title and in tone, this next track is a really good one to feature. So I'm going to close at least Journey out with I Was Born for This.
Oh, this one's so good.
This one is so good. I'm sure you've heard it before. I actually don't think it's one of the ones that I featured in our soundtrack episode. I think I featured Nascence and Threshold.
Yes. So Nascence I know for sure. But yeah, I was born for this.
Not talked about.
Oh, I'm excited.
It is gorgeous. Let me see if I can actually find it. There it is. What did you think about that?
That one is, I have to say, that's another one. You know how on the last episode of this, where we talked about this, and I was talking about the song Ashes in God of War soundtrack, and how it has that one climax where Eovor's vocals just really, just like every time I hear it, it just gives me chills. This song, I Was Born for This, has the exact same thing for me, because it is also like there's a very strong present vocal track in there, and it also has a moment midway or closer to the end of the song where it does swell into this one big gigantic moment, and that's the exact same thing. Goosebumps every time. So this song is by far fantastic to me. It's just it's outstanding.
It features the voice of Elizabeth Scott for the final track, I Was Born for This. So those vocals that you just heard were courtesy of Elizabeth Scott. And she does obviously an astonishing job and really manages to encompass that ethereal feel that especially the final arc of Journey the game is meant to encompass. So for the love of all that is good, even if you haven't played the game, and by now it's really old, so I can't blame you. Even if you haven't played Journey, it's fine. It's fine. Even if you haven't played it, please go listen to the soundtrack from start to finish in order, and you will understand why it's so acclaimed. It actually did win a Grammy, as I was trying to find Lisbeth's.
Oh, nice.
What's it called? It actually won a Grammy for like best video game soundtrack of that year, and I was like, holy crap! I didn't know they had that category.
They should. I mean,
yeah.
Because obviously, if these last few episodes have proven nothing, it's proven at least that there's some fantastic music out there in the world of video games. But no, Journey is a fantastic entry, and I totally understand why it sits at your number 4 spot.
And just think, that was only my number 4. What are the other 3 going to be?
I know, right? Like, that's what I've been doing for this whole list. Been like, you thought that was good? Like God of War last week. I was like, you thought that was good? And there's some good music there? Wait till you see what's up in the number 4. So are you good on Journey?
We're
locked
good.
in?
That's
Alrighty.
Journey.
So my number 4 is one of my, this one actually coincides with one of my, I believe it was on my favorite games of all time. It might not have made it in there. I can't remember now. But, oh, hello, kitty. Coming to say hello.
Just coming to say hello.
Tail in the face. Let me see. I want to make sure this one actually did make it, and I'm not speaking out my ass. Oh, nope, it did not make it on there. Okay, never
Jerrett.
mind. It was not on my top 10 games list. I thought it was, but it is one of my favorite games, and it is Assassin's Creed 2. So this one, so for those unfamiliar with Assassin's Creed 2, it is the first entry into the Ezio trilogy. So you're playing as Ezio Auditore de Firenze, and so basically this one takes place in Italy, like Renaissance Italy. So I feel like the themes and the music are reflective of that and of that time period. But still, this soundtrack stands out for me and hits in my number 4 spot for multiple reasons. A, it's fantastic music composed by Jesper Kyd, and it's got a lot of really great themes, but one of the biggest things about it and why I think this soundtrack sticks out in my head is, even though it's the second game in the series, Assassin's Creed 1, the themes and motifs from that didn't carry over and influence the music of past games. The ones from Assassin's Creed 2 did. And there's a consistent thread of the music that was set up in this soundtrack has been carried on throughout the rest of the series. So the first one, though, is the main theme of Assassin's Creed 2, Earth, that I want to feature right here. And I featured it before because I have talked about Assassin's Creed 2 music on past episodes before. But this one, I think, is one of the best, I think, opening themes of the Assassin's Creed series. So I want to start off by featuring that. What do you think of that?
Man, when that track picks up with what I would guess is it like a tambourine or like what's that shaking sound?
Let me hear it again. Hold on.
You know how like when you fill a gourd with like rice or something and then shake it, it gives you that like shaking percussion sound?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
Well, just more percussion in general picks up at that point.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. It does sound like
the
percussion hits, I think is what it is, because it starts off so slowly and so gently. It's like peacefully lulling you. I believe even when it plays in the beginning of the game, you're like getting an aerial view over a city and everything as you're going through and just seeing everything. And then of course, like the title of this game appears on the screen and all this stuff. And it's just one, again, it's stuck very deep in my mind and in my head. And so that's why I just keep coming back to this one. But overall, like it continues this whole track. It just features a lot of that like what you would imagine Italian Renaissance feel to this, like, so it's like it's borderline like sounding medieval, but it also sounds more like cultural than that, than like what
they had a little more culture.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so, man, look at that, she's just so curious today.
She just really wants to join.
And so
also, she just wants to eat my computer wires.
Of course.
Please stop it, Kitty.
Don't chew everything. Wait till we're done recording, Kitty, and then chew through things. But I really enjoy this one too. It's got some great more peaceful tracks that build into that. It also has some great battle tracks, or even one that's Florence Tarantella is really great because it is kind of more of like a dance like party, not like current party,
but
masquerade. Like a masquerade, exactly. Like more kind of that feel. It's got some great fight scenes, but fight music. But the one that I really wanted to focus on, and the one that really does carry through the other entries in this game series, is Ezio's Family. And so I just wanted to play a little bit of that one real quick. This song actually holds the same kind of themes as even Earth, the main theme song, does. But again, it's just that slow build, and even that slow like bum 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 bum.
That's actually probably my favorite part of that song.
Yeah, it's just
that,
so
like, driving melody,
right?
Or
and
harmony.
It's just so,
I don't know.
We're not musical people here.
We
just enjoy it.
Musicians.
But still, that is like, I hear those notes and I instantly am like Assassin's Creed. Like, just give And so one of the things though, and so throughout the later iterations of the series, like I said, they've kept those same that same motif of Ezio's Family. And even in Assassin's Creed Origins, they did a new version of it. Sarah Schachner composed a new version of it for Assassin's Creed Origins, which was probably, it's hard for me to choose which version of Ezio's Family I like better, because they're both fantastic entries and fantastic versions. And even in Odyssey, like you hear, even though Assassin's Creed Odyssey has a big, would think, it kind of does sound its own and separate from some of the other soundtracks in the series. But it still maintains, and you hear that melody coming through, and you're just like, oh man, it's just one of the things. That's why it's up on this list, is because it is what binds the Assassin's Creed 2 soundtrack is what binds the rest of the games musically together, and I just love that is the starting point. So that's why Assassin's Creed 2 sits at my number 4 spot.
There we go. There's too many Assassin's Creeds.
There are so many
weirdly numbered.
Assassin's Creeds.
There's so many.
So what is your number 3?
Well, my number 3, and I feel like this might be the point at which you and I have a bit of overlap.
Oh.
My number 3 is Ori and the Blind Forest.
So spoilers, it's my number 2.
Oh, bummer. Okay, well,
but no, that's fine. We'll just go ahead and talk about this both together, so now we both know.
Yeah, so really, Ori and the Blind Forest is a game that by now Jerrett and I have both played. I have not gotten to play Ori and the Will of the Wisp yet because I don't own a PC or an Xbox 360. How far have they gotten?
Patreon.com/TeamChatPodcast. Let's get Mogan a PC. Or an Xbox.
Or an Xbox. I'll take either. No, that's not true. Give me a PC. If I have to have one, I at least want a working PC. But Ori and the Blind Forest is an incredible game in so many aspects.
So many.
In terms of being an kind of action platformer, I would hesitate to call it a puzzle platformer because it's a little tiny bit puzzly, but not much. More in terms of like an exploration platformer is kind of where it falls into. It has a very direct story, even though it is a big world, it's not really the kind of game where you can go anywhere at any time and do things in whatever order you want. That's not the case with Ori. It has a very directed story, and it wants you to experience the game the way that it was designed. And the music fits into that design and into that narrative fantastically, phenomenally. It is, again, another incredible example of a game where the music doesn't just fit in, it enhances every aspect of the game. And I think that is obviously due to composer Gareth Coker, who did all of the tracks for, he also did he did all of the tracks for Ori and the Blind Forest, and he returned for Ori and the Will of the Wisp. Bigger and better than ever. So I'm really excited to someday get to play that game. Currently, no, but I want to start with, I guess I'll do both of my tracks. I do want to make sure that they both get heard. So let's start with First Steps into the Sunken Glades, which is a point of the game that is really early on, kind of right after the intro sort of closes. So I wanted to pick a bit of a slower track there sort of to start things off with for a couple of reasons. First Steps into the Sunken Glades does eventually kind of pick up on its own, but I really like that intro part because it is slower, it is more pensive, and I feel like it has such a great fit into where you're at in the game at the time because without being too spoilery, the gist is that Ori is now alone. And something has happened, and it just kind of is out in the wilderness on its own, and in this place called the Sunken Glades, sort of starting out on its own journey. And I feel like this track gives a really good kind of feeling of tentative apprehension. It's not necessarily panicked, but it doesn't have the same, it's not upbeat for sure.
Right.
It has that sense of, oh, what do I do now? It has that little bite of loneliness to it that I think fits in really well with this particular point in the story.
Yeah, I agree with that. And plus too, I know one of the things that I really love about this soundtrack too is Gareth Coker's use of the piano, especially it's a very main instrument throughout both actually soundtracks of Ori and the Will of the Wisps and Ori and the Blind Forest. But this one, I love how it is pensive is a very good word to describe it. Like you said, I like just how it's very simple. It very much, I agree. It does really set forth that feeling of loneliness, of melancholy, uncertainty.
Melancholy, that's the word. And uncertainty, both of those are words that I was trying to get to.
Well, I mean, it's perfect because it's just like this soundtrack is great. And this is really funny to me too, that this is like the only soundtrack that we've crossed over on. And I think probably that we will. You would have thought that we would have crossed at some point on some of these.
That's just proof of how diverse the world of video game soundtracks is.
Oh yeah,
and of course we play pretty different games a lot of the time. So this just happens to be one of the few that we've both played and that we both adored.
Well, oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, just that, like, yeah, it's one that. I mean, I talked about it when we talked about this game and gave a review about this game. This is the soundtrack that, like, it connects, like what you said, enhances the game story, because it enhances it for me in that the story of Ori and the Blind Forest is emotional enough, but this music just gives it an extra punch of just like of emotion to the whole thing. And then I just think I honestly feel like if the music was different in any way, like it would not be as good.
And I have an excellent quote to kind of follow up on that. So
perfect.
I was doing a ton of research for this, and again, in an interview with Gareth Coker, and I believe that this one as well is from the Sixth Axis. So good for the Sixth Axis for having so many fantastic interviews.
Yeah.
So in an interview with Coker, he said about developing the game's soundtrack, Moon Studios gave me access to every build and all of the development tools so that I could play the game and constantly get a feel for it. They did this with all of the departments as early as possible. I think this is one of the greatest strengths of the studio. Most game composers are avid gamers too, and from a personal standpoint, it was nice to be able to give feedback on design and pacing throughout the development process. He goes on to say that traditionally, composers come in quite often towards the end of a project. But if that happens in a game that features a large world like Ori, there's just no way that music can be adequately tested in a game beyond the usual, which is checking loops, transitions, etc. And I feel like this last line just really brings it home. He says, a lot of the reason that Ori feels the way it does is due to pacing, both in the story and gameplay and music. And I think that that's exactly, that hits the nail on the head from his own words, obviously.
Well, because it's so great, because it has these more slower, more like thoughtful pieces and everything throughout. But like I don't know what one of your other tracks that you have picked, but I know when I talked about it last time, like Finding Kuro or Fleeing Kuro, excuse me, is like one exceptional track that like shows the panic and the hysteria when the action actually does kick in and you're having to run away, go through the obstacles of the gauntlet courses of this game. And I think I even said there, it actually reminds me quite a bit of the music during the Wildebeest Stampede and the Lion King. It's just like that very fast pace and energy to it that like really, really keeps you on the tip of your toes or the tip of your fingers, I guess.
Well, the next track that I'm going to feature is not like that. So
that's fine. I just wanted to give a shout out to that one because of how how good he can make how Gareth Coker can compose these beautiful slower tracks, but then also kick it up when necessary and also like fit the bill of what you're expecting.
Yeah, and this next track kind of does a blend of those because it is a bit faster paced and it's a bit more doggos and it's a bit more upbeat, but it is a closer understanding of the past, which is, to clarify, from the definitive edition of the game, which includes what I believe is some of the DLC. Mm-hmm. So if you've played just the original base game, you may not have gotten to this part. But this DLC track deserves... It was a different area, and it was only in the definitive edition.
Oh. I played the definitive edition.
I think.
I could be wrong.
Did you?
I did. I know I have the definitive edition, but maybe I didn't get the right spot.
Did you get to the Lost... What's it called? The Lost Grove?
I honestly don't remember.
That's okay. Anyway, so this is from the area called the Lost Grove. So the reason I wanted to feature that track is for a couple of reasons. A, it has some really... necessarily vital, but some important parts of the background of Ori and the Blind Forest story that just really add a bit more of that emotional hook to the game.
Mhm.
So when you play through this part, you're gaining knowledge that you are gaining a closer understanding of the past. So I feel like this track has such a nice way of blending a new sound with an old sound, because you may have heard when that, I think it may have been like a deep cello or a bass, when that deep string kicks in, it's playing
So good.
it's playing the Ori theme, it's playing the main Ori like title track theme, but in a much slower, thoughtful way.
Mhm.
And that's all underlaid and contrasted with this kind of like pitter pattering, very quick, hopeful
Yeah, I
sound.
was gonna say like inspirational is how
Yeah,
that
very,
track
very
sounds.
inspirational, very hopeful. So even though it's not a big, bombastic, punchy piece, it does still have a way to like get its hooks into you
Mhm.
and make you
Mhm.
be like, "Yeah, I'm feeling so many emotions right now," which is how I feel all the time when I play the game for various reasons. But it's one of my favorite tracks, really, of the entire game. So a closer understanding of the past is my Ori closer.
Very nice. I do, since I mean this is my number 2 as well on my list, so I don't want to like jump back into this game and everything when we get to that. So I did want to just play real quick another one of my favorites from this. I know in the past I have featured like the main theme, Ori Lost in the Storm, because it features the great vocals of Ariel Brighton and different stuff like that. Fleeing Kuro, already talked about that. But another one that was just one of the more slower tracks, these like really peaceful. And it just, because this is the one that if I need to be the ultimate relax, the ultimate chilling out when I'm listening to music, I go to Ori and the Blind Forest. And I think it's for examples such as this, which is finding Sane, who is the piece of the spirit tree that interacts and is kind of your guide. Your hey, listen, of
Yeah,
Ori
for
and the
real.
Blind Forest. So I just really love that one. Oh, what were you gonna say?
I
Sorry.
love that track. Oh, it's so great. It's one of the best ones on there, I think, too.
Because
Definitely a favorite.
I just love how it starts off so gloomy. And again, it's reflective of how the music reflects what's happening in the game, because it starts off, it almost sounds like you're exploring like music you would expect in a cave. It kind of like has those things like sound like water droplets or something like that happening in
kind
the
of
very
that echoey
beginning.
quality to it.
Exactly. And then, so it's like you're still in this. This is actually the track that follows First Steps into the Sunken Glades. So it still has that mystery, that uncertainty, that melancholy about it. But then you find Sane and you're like, oh, things are looking better. And that's when it kicks up into that more energetic, hopeful, inspirational part of the song. And it just really, it's just so damn good. And so, yeah, I agree. Ori and the Blind Forest is one of the best soundtracks out there. That's why it's your number 3, my number 2. And it's some good stuff there. All right. My number 3, moving along here then, is one that, although we didn't quite sync up onto and overlap twice, we do have 2 entries at least from the same series. Any care to take any guesses?
Oh, is it Halo?
It is Halo indeed.
Ah,
This
I
time,
knew
though,
it.
Halo 2. Halo 2.
Oh.
Again, Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore, the composers there. Halo 2, I want to say of this Halo soundtracks, Halo 2 and 3 probably are the top for me. And it was a very big discussion in my mind as to which one of those was going to ultimately be the top. But I think for several reasons, Halo 2 takes the cake. One, it gives you the Halo theme journal mix that we Mjolnir mix, or whatever it is, mix that is like the big
Thor's hammer?
Yeah, that's what it's called. I kept like
really?
tripping over it. Yeah, I kept tripping over my pronunciation of it. Let me pull up the name. But yeah, Halo 2 Volume 1. It's a 2-volume soundtrack too, which is also great. Yeah, Mjolnir mix. Am I saying that right? I feel like I'm saying that right. Wrong.
You should just say it how the girl in the first movie says it. Meow meow. Just call it meow meow.
Anyway, so you get that incredible theme, which has that chorus that kicks it off, the energizing electric guitar that just is so driving and is so well known. You know, obviously one of the most well known themes in video games, but it also, though, features a couple different things. Like, it also has a song from Breaking Benjamin on here, "Blow Me Away," which is fantastic and is on my running playlist. It also features 4 different tracks called "Movements of the Odyssey" that are by the band Incubus, and they're like also really good. While not my favorite parts of the soundtrack, it's like a nice little departure from the more orchestral roots of the rest of the soundtrack into this more like rock band style of a song that what Incubus would provide. And so I just think it has a lot of variety in what it offers. But the biggest songs for me, like I think my favorite song on here is probably this song that I'm going to play for you, "Peril," and it's one that I'm pretty sure I've talked about it before.
I think I know it too.
Because one of the things that I love about the Halo soundtracks and the Halo 2 soundtrack in general is how it uses percussion. And I think "Peril" is a very, very, very good example of that. So let's listen to "Peril."
I'm ready.
Wait, this one might not actually be percussion. I'll listen to it. I know it's got some percussion, but so you see what I mean? Oh, that I realize now as I'm playing with it, this wasn't the best example of the percussion, but still, you did hear that. Like it's more not percussion, I guess is what I was trying to say. More of like the beats and the cadences of the song. And so this one, it had that like very plucked string, and then it also then did have something that sounded tambourine-ish that was kind of providing like the percussion of it. But then there was also the bass that was mirroring the plucking of the higher strings. And I just love how as the song goes and as the song progresses, it just slowly keeps having these new layers of instrument added onto it until it really does like reach its climax, and it's all these parts come together and blend so well together. And it just is a beautiful piece of music that I think
Peril's
just
a wonderful track.
Yeah, it's the song for me outside of the main Halo theme that I hear it. I'm like, it's fucking Halo, and it's great, and I don't want anything else. And so I think that track especially sets it apart. Another one though that I did want to that I wanted to focus though.
Can you hear her?
No, what's she doing?
She's just like yowling and meowing because she wants me to play with her.
Oh, silly kitten.
Kittens.
But then also, so on the second volume of Halo 2 soundtrack, so the first volume has the different movements of the Odyssey songs by Incubus. The second volume has these suites of music. We got Cairo Suite, Mombasa Suite, Mausoleum Suite, Delta Halo Suite, Sacred Icon Suite. And what makes these songs great is because they're suites, they're long as hell. So we've got Cairo Suite, 9 minutes 45, Mombasa Suite, 6 minutes 43, Mausoleum Suite, 8 minutes 12, Delta Halo Suite, 11 minutes and 28 seconds. So it's just like insane amounts of music came out of this game. But the other one that I wanted to play though is Unyielding. So let's listen to this track real quick. So that dun 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 dun.
Oh
That
my God,
part is
wonderful.
it's so good. And again, so I used the wrong phrase earlier when I was saying percussion. There is some great percussion, but it is more in the beat, in the cadence of the music is what I was trying to refer to. But because that is the perfect example of it too. It has, again, piano in there. First of all, let's talk about that. Love that in this, but it's just how it has every beat and it just seems to hit it just hits perfectly. And like the bass with the piano and everything in there just binds together to create these just driving pieces of music where it's like you feel the beats in your soul. And it's just
driving is definitely the right word for it, because you do have this definite feeling of momentum, of speed and momentum and purpose. And I feel like the Halo soundtrack is so good at giving you that sense of purpose.
Yes. And when the Halo soundtrack decides to slow down and to be more of a, emotional piece, it does that in spades well. The song Unforgotten is very good on this one. And that's where I think Halo 3 soundtrack especially shines. Like I know it's not this one that I'm talking about, but like of more examples of the slower Halo songs, like Finish the Fight, different stuff, Never Forget, great songs from Halo 3. And so I think Halo 2 is great because it gives us not only that main theme, it not only gives us Peril, it gives us Unyielding, but it also to just the sheer volume of the music you get, and similar to Assassin's Creed 2, it's just the themes that were created in these stay strong throughout the rest of the series. And I think it's just speaks to the quality of the music that Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore were able to create for this. So it's just an incredibly good piece of music and from an incredibly great series. And that's why it sits at my number 3. So
excellent choice, good sir.
We already know my number 2. That's Ori and the Blind Forest. But what's your number 2?
So my number 2 is, I will be perfectly upfront, a game that I have not played.
That's
and
fine.
I don't care.
It doesn't have to be a game you've played.
This is a game that I have not personally played. I have seen parts of it played by other people, but not the complete experience. So I don't know. There are many endings. I'll tell you that much. There are many different endings for this game. So there are a lot of different paths that it can take depending on your actions, and it's Nier Automata.
Oh,
so yes,
okay. I kind of wondered if this one would be somewhere on your list. It is one that I have not actually listened to at all.
Oh, buddy!
I know
these 2 tracks are gonna sell you on it right away.
Okay. Well, didn't it just get recently? I mean, and by recently, a few months ago, just get added to Spotify. I have a hard time listening. I have a hard time listening to like finding the soundtracks if it's on YouTube because I just legitimately hate ads. So if it's not on Spotify, I
usually find just the big, long, full, complete albums that don't have ads in them.
I should look for that too.
Anyways, the point is, before we even talk about it, let's just go on ahead and give you a little taste of what you're in for here, buddy. Because I feel like once you hear it, you're gonna get. I want to know your thoughts about where you think you are upon hearing this track. So this is, I'm not even going to tell you the title. Let's just go all in.
I like that vocals. I like that vocals a lot.
Them vocals are pretty awesome. But leading up to that, you have this kind of simple staccato style, I guess, just sort of melody going on in the background. Maybe not even melody. That's not the right word for it. Whatever music piece goes into that bass line, I don't know. We don't know anything about music. The point is, we really should
maybe try to get some better basic understanding if we're going to keep talking about these soundtracks. But there's so much there to know.
There's so much, and it takes so much time, and we just don't have that kind of time.
We just want to listen and enjoy and be like, this music pleases my ears and my soul. Yes. Therefore, I want to talk about it with people.
And that's all you need to know about it. Yeah. So hearing that little bit, what would you assume your environment is like?
Honestly, that made me feel like my environment was like more like a fantasy setting. I know Nier Automata is like maybe not steampunkish is the right way, but it's modern or like future modern. But I would almost put it like that would have put me in like a fantasy setting, like going something that's more even like maybe a medieval fantasy setting.
Interesting. So that track is called Forest Kingdom. And the reason that I picked it is because I feel like it's such a good example of. Can you hear that?
I had my dogs are barking. That might have been what
that
is.
Okay, maybe I'm hearing your dogs.
Yeah,
okay, never mind. So the more natural percussion sounds mixed with that sort of hollow, metallic sounding chime that kicks in, and of course the vocals themselves, which almost have a sort of alien sounding quality to them, they give you a real sense of the game's world, in that you are in an Earth that is far in the future, that is devoid of humans, but overrun with decaying robots. So the basic gist is that in some parts, nature is kind of taking back over some of the places that you visit, for example, the Forest Kingdom, and in others, there are just these giant monolithic reminders of the past rusting away before your eyes. So it's a world that is in slow transition from one phase of its life into the next, and I think Forest Kingdom does an amazing job of blending those two worlds into a single track.
Very nice, very nice. I do like that a lot.
So this next track that I'm going to feature, you're going to be able to hear a little bit of the vocals, but not a lot of them. So I do want to go on ahead and say that, first of all, the composer is Keiichi Okabe. So Okabe did also do the tracks for Nier, the first Nier, I think, and either Nier Gestalt and or Nier Replicant. So he's been with the Nier series for a long time. And one of the returning vocalists is Emmy Evans, who unfortunately you're not going to hear, but you will hear newcomer to the series, Janique Nicole. Her voice is astonishing, and I can't wait for you to hear this.
Nice.
But so something that I think is really cool for the game's atmosphere, and this is just something that I thought was so interesting, is that I've read a ton of interviews straight off the bat. So I'm going to just say, in an interview with Games Radar, Okabe asked his interviewer an interesting question that I just thought was really kind of out of left field. So they're talking about something else entirely, and then Okabe kind of sidetracks himself, and he asked the interviewer, for my own personal reference, when you listen to the music of Nier Automata, do you feel like it's Japanese or do you feel like it's something else? And the interviewer said, I would say it feels exotic, like it came from a culture I've never heard of before. And Okabe was really jazzed about that. He was like, thank you. And the interviewer's like, is that what you were going for? And Okabe says, I just wanted to ask because my generation, we grew up aspiring to create music like Western music. So while I was young, I was creating fake Western music in a way. Now that I've aged, I've accepted a lot of my culture as well, and I started to create what I can create, what is me, what's personal to me. So hearing you say it was exotic makes me happy because you didn't think it was Western music. And I feel like Forest Kingdom is such a good example of that, in that it does sound like a culture you've maybe never heard of before. It might sound semi-reminiscent of certain scenes, but it's its own cultural style, and I just feel like that's such a wonderful thing to aspire to in a game.
Nice. I'm excited to hear this.
All right, so Weight of the World then is, it has some connotations in the gameplay that I think you're not going to understand if you don't know what happens at the end. So it brings an extra punchy impact right to the feels, right to the emotions if you know what's going on. But even without that, you're going to know immediately what an amazing song this is, and by extension, what an amazing soundtrack the game is.
Nice.
I feel like I'm losing hope in my body and my soul, and the sky, it looks so ominous, and as time comes to a halt, silence starts to overflow. My cries are inconspicuous.
Now, don't hate me for kind of cutting off right as it gets to the chorus there, but that gives you now, because I want people to listen to the entire track, which is astonishing. And at a certain point, I do think that Emmy Evans' vocals do come in, at least in the live version, they do. So as if you didn't already need to know, but everybody should know, Nier Automata's soundtrack is so good that it has a traveling live show. So the fact that it got to that level, of recognition and of people, you know, that even haven't played the game wanting to buy tickets for these live shows, I think is a testament to what the soundtrack has been able to achieve.
Right.
So Okabe is a genius, and I think the entire Nier Automata soundtrack is worthy of at least one listen, if not 1,000 listens. There are different versions of almost every track. There are combat versions, 8-bit versions from the hacking sequences, and more dynamic versions that have these vocals in them. And each version does bring something new and interesting to the tracks themselves. So Nier Automata's soundtrack is so unique, and it deserves to have its own special place in the world of gaming soundtracks.
Very nice. It's one too that doesn't take a lot of it takes a lot of turns in the style.
Oh, it takes
of music.
a lot of
because
turns.
Obviously that song you just played for us is a normal what you would hear. I always would say just like a vocal song, like a lyrical song, but it's not a soundtrack song. But so it's you could hear that on the radio or something like that. But then that first song you played was more like this peaceful melody and stuff like that. But then I want to say the other song that you played for me a long time ago from this is "Become as Gods."
Ooh, "Become as Gods,"
which is just
all of my willpower not to include that one again because I love.
I'm just giving it a shout out anyway because I remember you talking about that one and being like, "Man, that's different. That sounds really interesting." And because it has that, what is it, the robots in the back, "Become as gods" and all that stuff.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's another great one.
I love Weight of the World and I love Forest Kingdom, but "Become as Gods" might still be my favorite track from the entire album. And it's a 3-disc album, by the way.
Oh, wow.
So if you actually bought the full official album, it's 3 discs. That doesn't even include all of the different versions for all of the tracks. So if you actually smashed all of them together, you would get 7 or 8 hours worth of soundtrack.
Damn.
So it is a monster. And all the better for us to be able to enjoy it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you did sell me. I need to go listen to the whole thing. So I'll definitely put that on my list as a priority to listen to over the next week. But yeah, because I'm curious enough. It actually, Nier Automata was one of the soundtracks on the OKBs that I mentioned earlier. There's one that they were fighting to where to place it because they all wanted it at different levels because some of them super loved it and wanted it really high. Others were it's not my cup of tea, but it was one of their hotly debated
some people are just uncultured swine, and we can't fix everyone, even when they're wrong. I will say that Nier Automata's soundtrack did win a bazillion awards.
I do remember
the
that
year it came out, and much deserved. It's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece.
We've now reached, so Nier Automata, that was your number 2.
That was my number 2.
That was your number 2. Okay, so if we already know my number 2 then of Ori and the Blind Forest, to keep up with our thing, you would then now go again for your number 1, or I can go with my number 1 first if you want.
Why don't you go with your number 1 first?
All right, so my number 1, let's recap. Let's give you all a little refresher here on where we stand with number 10, Donkey Kong Country, number 9, Red Dead Redemption 2, number 8, Stronghold, The Last of Us at number 7, Doom 2016 at number 6, number 5, God of War, number 4, Assassin's Creed 2, number 3, Halo 2, number 2, Ori and the Blind Forest, and now my number 1.
Wait, I want to guess it.
I was going to say, do you have any guesses at all what this could be?
I said it without really thinking about it. I'm not sure I do have a good guess for what I think could be your number 1.
It's a lot out there. Think about what I like. Think about my interests. Think about
Cowboys.
Yeah, sure. Sure. That's my interest.
I mean, my guess would, of course, be something related to Star Wars, but I don't think that's right.
It's not right.
Okay, so it's not Star Wars.
It's not Star Wars.
You already talked about Halo. You already did God of War.
I did.
Oh, God. And you already did The Last of Us.
I did.
Oh, no.
This one, honestly, when I was putting together the list...
Guacamelee.
No, although great. Guacamelee is not it. But no, this one, honestly, I was getting to it and I'd been putting together the list, putting it and building it together. And as I was still where does this game fit? Where does it fall? And I tried it up higher on the list and I was like, no, that doesn't make sense because I listened to this one so much. And then it got closer to the top and then it became a very big fight in my head between Ori and this game being there.
No kidding.
Because to me, I think out of
so
all
it's one that I've heard you talk about then before.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, why can't I think of it?
Because this soundtrack to me, I feel like for my personal tastes in both the game, even though, okay, I will give you this hint. I have played the game. I have not finished the game.
Oh, Jared, that's so many games. That's not even a hint. Not helpful.
It's a very big game. I will say that. It's
Breath of the Wild?
No, not Breath of the Wild. But to me, this game with the not even the gameplay, the styles of music and the variety of the music offered in the fact that it ranges from peaceful and tranquil to way over the top bombastic and epic. It has some very intense vocals in it and very diverse vocals, both of foreign language and how the vocals are used to express parts of the gameplay. Is this given any hints at all, or can I reveal my number one favorite soundtrack of all time?
Just go on ahead and reveal it. I can't
Here
think
it
of
comes. It is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, I don't think I would have guessed that.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think I ever would have gotten around to it, mostly because I keep forgetting that The Witcher is a game and not just a television show featuring Superman.
But The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, composed by Marcin Przybylowicz and Nikolai Stroinsky.
This is your number one.
This is my number one because
that's very unexpected.
It literally, like I said, it's the full package for me in terms of a video game soundtrack, because it does have the peaceful moments, which I'll play some of those. But I think even how the soundtrack is introduced with the first song, "The Trail," is just so epic. Like I'm having a hard time thinking of different descriptors for this soundtrack and all the variety that it has, because it just has that variety. It has these very intense. Like I said, what's interesting is because obviously you're a monster hunter. Geralt as the Witcher is a monster hunter. And so what's interesting is a lot of these soundtracks, the vocals will almost have a more monster quality to them. Not like it's actually speaking. It's more of like a shrieking. It's more of a screaming kind of thing. And there is actual spoken language. Like I was doing some research and looking into it because I was like, it doesn't sound quite. It's not like Slavic, because Witcher is from Poland and all that. It doesn't even sound like it's Polish, but it's actually Scots Gaelic is what some of the spoken language in this
no kidding
in this are. And so it's just a very unique track. It does have those like more Slavic influences in the tone, especially in like its tavern pieces and different things like this. But for giving me a medieval fantasy adventure with this incredibly diverse amount of music in it, I just think that's where it sits and reigns supreme. So I know I've played The Trail before, but I want to give a sampling of The Trail, the opening track of Witcher 3 Wild Hunt.
I see what you mean about it. I see what you mean about it having almost like a shrieking quality because of I think maybe because of the octaves that a lot of those strings reach. It does make it sound, and I use your favorite word that you use all the time when we're talking about music, it makes it sound very frenetic. Yes. You love that word.
I do.
That's your favorite word.
I really do need to expand my vocabulary of descriptors, because I do use that word a lot.
Thesaurus.com.
But like it's the layering. It's the layering of like the different vocalizations as well. And I again, it's trying to place, but like even the stringed instruments, the strumming of that and how it has that odd, like off twang to it almost in a sense, is just creates a very unique sound. And I think it just very well matches this world of a medieval setting, but you're always on this grand adventure. You don't know what's out there. It's wild, it's fierce, which is perfect when you're playing a game called The Wild Hunt. And so it just has all these different parts to it. I did want to sample some of the slower things of this song as well, of this album as well. So I was going to play Wake Up Siri, and it just is a little bit more of a peaceful setting. I was actually this morning, I was trying to refresh myself on some of the tracks and everything like that I wanted to feature on this. And so I was actually, for the first time ever, I've never done this, but I actually woke up super early this morning and was playing Dragon Age Inquisition. And I lowered the music volume on the game and played Witcher soundtrack accompanying it instead on the Spotify on the PS4. And it was actually like, this works. I love it. But here is Wake Up Siri. So it's just got very peaceful strings. It's got that nice little woodwind in the back, just to emphasize these more peaceful moments. And that's what I just love about this. It can do the over the top action. It can have, peaceful moments. It can have intense battle sequences when you're fighting hellish beasts. And I think it just all comes together in one great, fantastic, and amazing package. Not only is like the main soundtrack of The Witcher 3, tons of great tracks. I want to say it's like a 55 song soundtrack. There are also full soundtrack albums for the DLC Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine. So there's tons of music for you to experience in The Witcher from The Witcher 3. And I think it just does it for me. It just clicks. It just hits all the right buttons. It's another one, like how I mentioned when I was talking about Doom. If I'm doing graphics or something like that just needs me to, I really just need to hunker down and it's to get lost in the work that I'm doing. It's usually a toss up between Doom and The Witcher 3. And more often than not, Witcher 3 is the one that really takes place because it has the nice, like energetic beats to keep me engaged, but then it can calm me down a little bit, slow it down. Keep me engaged, helps me build that focus, find that focus to get through my work. And it's just incredible music. So
that is still just so surprising to me. I really never would have guessed. What would
you have thought would have been my number one?
I would have guessed one of the games that you had already talked about. I would have guessed The Last of Us. I would have guessed Ori. I would have guessed even like Doom or something like that. So the Halo 2 was a bit of a surprise. Mm-hmm. I'm not super surprised that it made it to your list. I'm surprised it was that high. Or Red Dead, really kind of any of the other games that you play on the regular. Giddy.
Yeah, I know. It's a very interesting thing, and I think that's why this topic has been so fun, because it really just shows it's like the different components of different things that you can like and how they all stacked all up against each other, how they rank and how they play against each other. It's just like, I necessarily wouldn't have going into this, I did not expect Witcher 3 to be my number one. But then as I was talking about it in my head more and going over the songs and the different things I liked, and I was just like, it's just one that I consistently go back to, probably more than any other soundtrack. And so I think that's why another reason it sits at my number one.
So meanwhile, my number one will come as a surprise to absolutely no one. You can definitely guess what it is.
Oh, yeah. Hollow Knight?
Yeah, of course it's Hollow Knight. Yeah. It could not be any other game. So this is one of the rare instances of my favorite game of all time, which is now Hollow Knight, also being favorite soundtrack of all time, which I feel is pretty appropriate because, for people like you and me, you can't have one without the other. The ideal game has both. Mm-hmm. It has a soundtrack as strong as as strong as the game itself. She has just decided that she's going to help. Today. She does want to record. Well, she's just really excited about Hollow Knight.
I get it.
So we're going to start, though. So I'm featuring two tracks that I haven't talked about before. I believe in the past I've talked about definitely Green Path and maybe Crystal Peak or City of Tears. I can't remember
City
which
of Tears and Green Path are the ones that I remember the most. I also really like Green Path.
Yeah, everybody loves Green Path. It's a phenomenal track. Regrettably, that's not the one you're going to hear first.
That's fine.
Let's go with... And part of the reason that I picked this track is because it's one of the first songs that you hear in the game, period. So we are going to be listening to Dirt Myth, or depending on your pronunciation, Dirt Mouth. Go with whatever feels right.
Dirt Myth sounds more refined.
So, Dirt Myth is not an overly complicated track. It's arguably one of the more simple ones from the game, and I feel like that is such a good piece of setting for where you're at when you start the game. So, of course, Hollow Knight, you play as a nameless, faceless knight because you wear a mask the entire time. And Dirt Myth is the first location outside of your initial kind of tutorial location, which I think is called King's Pass. It doesn't even have a name when you start. So Dirtmouth is the first real location that you emerge into. And thematically, it's the first introduction that you get to Hollow Knight as a whole. So this track is very somber, desolate. It gives you a feeling of greatness that is long since passed. And I feel like that lone piano that is eventually joined by that lone violin, which are consistents throughout the entire game. Piano and violin are two instruments that Christopher Larkin, the game's composer, heavily relied on for the soundtrack. And this is such a good centerpiece to really throw those two into high relief as the primary instruments. Other tracks feature much different and more dynamic orchestral pieces, but Dirt Myth is really just the two of them with a little bit of accompaniment on the side. And it gives you that sense of when you walk into Dirt Myth, it's dark, it's windy. There's just one person around at first. There's just Elderbug. And he's old, he's aging, and he's pretty much the only one left that is there to tell the tales of Hallownest Long Gone, which is the location that you eventually descend into. And that track is just such a good starting point to get you ready for what's to come. Even though other tracks do eventually pick up and they're much more bombastic, this starting one that is just so somber is an amazing introduction to the game.
I also think it's interesting, not only that, how much this like last 4 entries for us have featured. Because when we played, I can't remember now which one was the first one that we listened to. I think it was what was your number 4?
Journey.
I don't know if it was that one. I don't remember. Oh, no, it was Ori. We were talking about piano, and we were just like, it's like piano. But like now these last like 3-4 entries that we've talked about have featured this. So obviously like that's a very big key for us. And like the mix of piano with strings.
This is just basically like a look into what we like.
Exactly.
Obviously.
It's like, oh, you want to peg us? Throw in some piano and piano and strings, and you've got us pegged in what we like. So.
It's not hard.
No, but I definitely I agree with what you're saying. Like it's this it's simple, it's simplistic, but it's a very haunting melody also as well.
Yes, haunting is a great word.
It definitely sets up this feeling of discovery of things, secrets yet to be discovered, like tales of a or like what you said. What did you say? You put it so great.
Tales from the past of a civilization long gone.
Yes, that's exactly that's a great way to describe it. I totally agree.
And the next track I'm going to feature is really important thematically for the game because I'll tell you first and then we'll sort of talk about it. We're going to be listening to Hornet's theme. So Hornet actually is the character that's going to be coming up as the playable character in Hollow Knight Silksong. We have no idea when Silksong is ever going to come out, but this is her theme from Hollow Knight.
Very nice.
So as you can see, that her theme is amazing. So the first time that you encounter Hornet and you hear her theme play, you are pitched into battle. So her theme is also technically her combat theme. And as I'm sure you can tell, it's not frenetic. That's not the right word for it. That is a very intentional and elegant track. Yes. I feel like it is arranged in such a way as to give you a feeling of higher thought, let's say. And Hornet is the real first antagonist that the knight encounters. And I use the word antagonist lightly there. I want to use my favorite word, deuteragonist, but I'm not going to quite yet. Because at this point in the game, you really only know her as an antagonist. She encounters you, and she immediately initiates combat with you.
Should have asked questions first, you know what I mean? Could have avoided some unnecessary combat.
No, not from Hornet's perspective. So Hornet is a very mysterious and imposing enemy because she's one of the first real boss battles that you get in the game. So she's an elegant fighter with a vicious needle as her weapon. The knight has a nail, Hornet has a needle, and it's attached to a silken thread, which is how she throws it at you. So her movements are very quick and very deadly. And I feel like her soundtrack is such an amazing reflection of that because it is heavily string-based. All of those arrangements, kind of accompanied by an underlying piano, were very string-tacular. I'm going to make up new words. Very string-tacular. And you just know right away that you're not fighting a normal enemy.
Yeah.
You know, a normal boss battle may have been a little bit more intimidating, and her track isn't necessarily intimidating, it's more awe-inspiring. And I feel like that's how you know that Hornet is special. Apart from all of the other characters that you encounter, she's special and her soundtrack is special. And I feel like it's just another amazing example of what Hollow Knight's and Christopher Larkin's soundtrack achieves.
Well, and I like that it achieves that without an overly, again, like you would probably say like how many strings do you think there were? There was like the main like violin doing the more higher pitch thing. Yeah, I'm thinking like 4 to 5. You hear that cello in the background, like providing the more bass notes
like
to
a
it.
Quartet.
Yeah, and it's just it comes across. You're right. Frenetic or is not the right word for it. It is more like refined.
Yes, it's
refined
very
energy, I would say.
And that's very appropriate for Hornet because without being too spoilery, she is highborn, we'll say. So she herself is kind of like an aristocrat, more or less. So her soundtrack should reflect that. It should feel aristocratic and better than you, for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible. That's some really good music right there.
And even though we don't have time to feature all of the tracks from Hollow Knight, but I kid you not, there's not a bad one. They're all amazing. Listen to everything you can from Hollow Knight, and then go listen to the new samples from Silksong.
Those are great too.
Because even though there's only 2 out so far, they are already phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
And I know for a fact that we are in for another amazing ride of soundtracks. Thank God for Christopher Larkin.
For real. Thank God for all these composers, honestly, because like they're all creating some fantastic music for us. And we, you know, building these lists, I still hold, now that we've reached the end and we've given our top 10 soundtracks of all time, like this was so much harder, like we said, again, than picking your top 10 games. And it is interesting, like how much difference there was in our 2 lists. Like there was not a whole lot of crossover between these.
No.
And so that's just been a very interesting part in just like how you can have these games that you love playing them and you love going through their stories. But then when you take that part out and examine the separate entity, a separate part of it, the music in and of itself, it just like has these all different levels for you to explore different things, more depth, you know, for you to go and dig into these games and these worlds and everything. But this is, I gotta say, this is probably one of the longest series. I mean, it's like 4. No, I guess not. Our platformers was longer than this, but like I guess we did 4 episodes of that one too. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but basically this was like it took us longer to get through this list than I thought it would because we just had so much to say.
Yeah, we just have so much to say, and it's such for us like a personal endeavor because it's our favorite subject from video games by and large.
Yeah.
So we really enjoyed doing this one. There will certainly be more of them to come. This just happens to be our first go.
Exactly.
Ranking our top 10.
It's like how we did with our top 10 games of all time. Like we played those, we did that, we made our first list, and then earlier, was it this year? Or was it? No, it was on our Extra Life special episode where we like updated it to see if any games we had played in the last year were able to make it in, and we had some changes. So yeah, I don't think we'll do near as an exhaustive relisting of this anytime soon, but we'll like provide our updates and everything like that as after an appropriate amount of time. But obviously, everybody, we would love to hear what your favorite soundtracks of all time. If you have gone through the tedious task of trying to rank all 10 of the top 10 of your favorite soundtracks, we would love to hear those as well. Again, share them with us in the comments on our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Go to our Discord. We have a whole channel set up there that's just for us to talk about soundtracks. We actually just had some pretty good conversation about Hollow Knight on there as well. And so we love video game music. Please share with us all the music that you can. We also, though, I keep forgetting, I know it needs to be updated. I need to go back and update it. But on Spotify, you can search for, if you search for me on there, Jerrett Wilson, I think you might be able to find it outside of that. But I made a playlist of all the soundtracks that we featured that are on Spotify. So I definitely need to update it with these lists for sure to make sure that they're all on there. But I think if you search for soundtrack spotlight or something like that, I'll put the list out there. But if not, look for me. Yeah, if you do playlists, if you search soundtrack spotlight in Spotify, it'll be in the playlist. Should be like one of the first playlists. But I'll post the link in our Discord too, so you can have that and go back and listen to that, so you can hear all the music that we featured and talked about across the history of the show. I went back when I was first building this out to episode 1. Anything time we talked about it, I tried to include it all in there. So I know it needs to be updated, so I'll be working on that and everything too. But we love the music. Here's a good place where you can listen to some of our favorites that we've talked about throughout the history of the show. But with that, we featured a ton of music this episode. I don't know if we'll necessarily, this whole series has been a soundtrack spotlight, so we won't do one of those today. Just leave you with all the thoughts and memories of these great tracks that we've played for you here today. But so until next time, everybody, I am one of your hosts, Jerrett Wilson, joined by Rachel Mogan.
Adios.
We'll see you all next week. Until then, enjoy all this wonderful music. Bye, everybody.